Hello, I'm Matt Galloway, and this is the Current Podcast.
You can see black puffs of smoke and then just a constant haze.
I made my way to Costco, which is about less than a 10-minute walk from where we are. There were burnt out cars in a parking lot. There was a transport truck that was burnt out along the road.
Looking now at flights, they have just skyrocketed in price with different airlines. I think I saw one even as much as $3,000 for a direct flight from Puerto Vallarta to Toronto.
Thousands of Canadian tourists are still stranded in Mexico after a surge of cartel violence over the weekend. Criminal groups have been blocking roads, torching vehicles, and exchanging gunfire with Mexican security forces. It all began Sunday after the leader of the powerful Jalisco New Generation Cartel was killed. The violence spread beyond Jalisco State to other parts of the country, including popular resort towns like Cancun, Acapulco, and Mazatlan. But it has since calmed, and Canadian airlines are starting to resume flights to Puerto Vallarta later today. Global Affairs Canada says that more than 26,000 Canadians are registered in Mexico. Robert Verge is one of them. He's a Canadian living in Puerto Vallarta. Robert, good morning.
Hi, good morning. Nice talking to you.
Good to talk to you. I know it's early, but what's the situation like where you are right now?
Very quiet, actually. Ever since Sunday, the silence here in the city has been deafening in a way. The situation is gradually going back to normal. Since yesterday afternoon, shops started opening again. People are needing to buy food, water, basic supplies, and there are very long lineups at the grocery stores that are open. There are cars going by. The taxis are back doing their work with the airport. The airport road was reopened in the afternoon. The airport kept saying they were open for business, but the airlines were all shut down. So that was a bit of a pinch for the tourists needing to go back home. I think this is going to get back on track in the coming days. And to put things in perspective, if you like, this city is 300,000 residents, locals, and 10 million tourists a year. And they got really scared by this. But the city here is accustomed to a hurricane every second year. All in all, if I want to be a bit cynical, this was no worse than a snowstorm in New York City. We got up Sunday morning. Sunday is the only quiet morning in the week. No traffic, no nothing. But then those plumes of black smoke rising up in the air. And at 9 o'clock, it became pretty clear that it was a generalized situation, and they told us to stay within our houses and residences. And at the same time, we learned about the death of the big shot of the Jalisco cartel.
What did you hear from your place? I mean, you saw the smoke, but could you hear gunfire and what have you?
No, nothing at all. It has to be very clear that this was an epidemic reaction from those street level city bums that traffic around the city for the cartels, maybe, but they're part of the. People don't realize, when you live here. I live with a Mexican family, and they point them out to me. They go on motorcycles without license plates and without helmets, and the police never talks to them because they know they're above the law. And it's a strange situation that the local people are not tolerating, but they have to live with this. And Sunday morning, the damage that was done was only intended to disrupt the activities, and the police didn't even show up. One of the big complaints of the local people is that like these 200 cars and buses and vehicles were set on fire by little motorcycle gangs, and not once in the day the police showed up. Now, the usual situation here is that the police are parading. There are 8 different corps of police that go on their high-grade pickup trucks with heavy machine guns and heavy armament, and they were nowhere to be seen. Neither the firemen were not there at all during several hours of the day. The police always shows up when the damage is done. And one thing that's hard for us to comprehend, but the pressure that's been put on the cartel since the arrival of this new president, it comes from high up, and she has made the army responsible for ending this war with them, because it's usually all talk, no action, and the cartel are very brutal. If the police gets close to them, they shoot them down. They're very, very cruel.
We're gonna talk more about that pressure in just a moment, but just before I let you go, I mean, will this change? Does it change how you see life in Mexico?
No, I'm an optimistic person, and I believe that this it's the start of something different. People were shocked that these street bums would set fire to hundreds of small corner stores, which are the lifeline of the activity here. The OXXO and Kiosco stores that were burned down are the lifeline of everyone. That's where you go and charge your phone up with data. That's where you go to get money transfers. Regular people, they don't have bank accounts here. The bums even set fire to the 2 branches of the Social Security Bank. That's where the old people get their pensions, and there's nothing to understand. The other thing, they burned down pharmacies as well, drugstores, and they burned down motorcycle shops, and that's how they go about life. They ride motorcycles, and it's very hard to understand. Except that they wanted to create havoc. They succeed in that. Now the only thing that they've had to flee the city, of course, but what's left. Now in some villages around, they've dug trenches on the road to prevent passage. The problem is going to be what we fear, what we're worried about is the food and fuel provisioning. The fuel comes from Manzanillo, 7 hours from here on a 2-lane windy road. Right. And they've cut that road. They made trenches into it in some places. The fruit and vegetable come down from the mountain on one single road that they've also destroyed. That's going to take some time to repair. That's mostly that's not going to affect the tourists, except that I'm sure the hotels are not getting their provisioning. I mean, everything has been brought to a halt, and here, people live day by day. They have nothing in their fridges, so they line up at the store and hope for food to be there. But and they usually eat out in the street. They barely cook at home. They go out. There are food stands everywhere, so people eat out for $5, and that's it.
We're going to talk. We're going to talk more just now about what's going to come up next. In the meantime, I mean, I'm glad you're okay, and I'm glad things seem to be getting back to normal. Robert, thanks for speaking with us.
Yes, thank you.
It's good to talk to you. Robert Verge is a Canadian who's been living, as you heard, in Puerto Vallarta for the last 5 years, and was talking about what life is like in that town, a very popular resort town right now. The Foreign Affairs Minister for Canada said on Monday that she'd been in touch with her Mexican counterpart. The situation is expected to, in his words, normalize in the coming days. Anita Anand encouraged all Canadians in Mexico to register with Global Affairs Canada. And as I mentioned, about 26,000 Canadians have done that already. She also said Canadians should follow all local guidelines, including sheltering in place orders, and to monitor airline communications about the status of their flights. David Mora is a senior analyst for the International Crisis Group. He's in Guadalajara. David, good morning to you.
Good morning, Matt.
We saw some scenes from the airport in Guadalajara, people fleeing through the concourse building, hiding in parts of the corners there. There was smoke off in the distance. What has life been like over the last couple of days in that community of Guadalajara?
Right. Well, I mean, just to put things into context, Guadalajara is a major metropolitan zone.
Yeah.
It's actually Mexico's second largest city with over 5 million people. Certainly on Sunday, the city came to a complete standstill. It, as your previous guest said, it reminded me of, the scenes of the pandemic. People were on lockdown. No one was to be seen on the streets. Most businesses shut down and, doing simple things in Mexico, such as buying a taco was quite an odyssey. Because I'm not from here. I'm here on work. I needed to, go out to find basic supplies. Ended up lining up for 5 hours to buy one simple taco. And the situation was pretty similar to thousands of people who were stranded in the city from out of state. The scene that you were describing from the airport, yes, there were multiple blockades in the city, and the narco blockades, what they are, they're usually, gang members. They steal cars, buses, trucks. They set them up on fire, and they blockade the streets. The situation at the airport, though, unfortunately, there were a lot of fake videos going around, showing planes on fire and attacks inside the airport facilities, which were debunked by the authorities and other people, fact checkers as well. What we saw from inside were people panicking, rightly so, during, they were told to shelter, and people panicked. And that was kind of like a feeling around the city. And I mean, it's understandable. Again, this is a large city, and just seeing what was happening, it's barely, like a normal reaction.
What do we know about why the Mexican authorities went after the leader of this cartel now?
So I think there are multiple factors. There are immediate factors to the actual operation that we still are not familiar with, and probably it will take time, for the government to disclose why now and why this specific moment within the bilateral relationship with the U.S. But maybe I think the government has been learning lessons from previous experiences, from previous episodes when they went directly against, a big boss cartel like El Mencho. Maybe, in terms of location, he was known to move around, large urban areas like Guadalajara. But this time around, he wasn't. He was in Tapalpa, which is a smaller, more rural type of municipality. So maybe that gave them a good moment. They had good intelligence from what we know about the details of who they were, after the connections that they were following. Maybe it was the moment. We might be seeing a moment in which it's now or never opportunity. But certainly within the larger scheme of things, the U.S. had been demanding from Mexico, like these bigger targets, what the White House and the State Department have been calling significant outcomes in the fight against criminal groups. So certainly that might have added political pressure for the Sheinbaum administration, to produce an outcome like this one.
It's interesting. Claudia Sheinbaum said that there was no involvement of U.S. troops in the operation to take out El Mencho, but they did. Mexican authorities rely on U.S. intelligence and an exchange of information. What do you make of that?
Right. So I think this is I think this is a huge political win for President Sheinbaum, because she's underpinning the strategy that she's been bringing to the table in her conversations with Donald Trump. What she's betting on is Mexico and the U.S. can cooperate. We can have our security agencies. We can have both governments sharing intelligence, information, pushing, more the policy ideas, the bureaucratic things in terms of what comes, the drugs that go up north through the border and the weapons that come south into Mexico. But then we don't need U.S. troops in Mexico. Like, if the time comes, Mexican troops are going to be able to do it. Mexican troops are going to raise up to the occasion. And that is basically what we saw. Sharing information, sharing intelligence, planning an operation together, but there's no need to have U.S. troops on Mexican soil. Mexican troops can do it.
Do you worry that this will lead to more violence? When we saw El Chapo, the cartel leader, captured, a decade ago, there was an explosion of violence within that cartel that he led, and that violence continues today.
That's certainly the case, Matt. Unfortunately, chopping off the head of a snake doesn't kill the snake in the criminal world, in the organized crime world here in Mexico. It only creates opportunity and incentives for forces within the organization to try to take over control, especially in this case in which there's no clear succession line. There's not a clear heir to Nemesio, to El Mencho. So there's going to be there are incentives for multiple forces within the organization to battle over control. But not only that, this situation may also be read by smaller local crime groups in Mexico that had ongoing turf battles against Jalisco. So they might read this situation as the cartel Jalisco, their enemy, the hegemonic cartel, is weak now. So it's moment for them, to attack and gain the upper hand. So it's not only the tensions and the violence that is going to come from within the cartel as it reaccommodates and finds a new leader and structure, but also how the other enemies, local cartels, are going to react to this. And unfortunately, the moment of this stabilization is going to bring a wave of violence.
We just have a couple of minutes left. Can you talk a little bit more about what's at stake here for Mexico? You have pressure from the United States. You have Claudia Sheinbaum, who is under pressure internally to deal with violence. You have the World Cup that's coming as well. And it's coming to Guadalajara, as you mentioned, a major city that's going to be hosting matches at the World Cup. And so what's at stake for Mexico in terms of dealing with this sort of violence?
So there are three things. There are three goals in here. And unfortunately, for not only the president and the Mexican government, but for all Mexicans, those three goals don't necessarily go hand by hand. The first one is keeping a functional relationship with the U.S., in which Mexico needs to provide these extraordinary efforts to keep President Trump at bay and his most interventionist impulses. In terms of, acting unilaterally with the U.S. military in Mexico.
Sending troops across the border.
Exactly. So we need to keep, the Mexican government needs to keep doing these extraordinary efforts. But unfortunately, those might go against the stated goal of the president of pacifying Mexico. Because as I said before, delivering these huge cartel bosses, what history has taught us time and again is that it only incentivizes more violence. It only increases the problem of violence in Mexico. And that is what Mexicans really care about, right? The domestic constituency here, us Mexicans, we're tired of 20 years of brutal violence, of hundreds of thousands of homicides. So the president also needs to cater for the domestic audience. And she knows that has been a huge issue and that it was a major shortcoming by her predecessor and political mentor, former President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. So she knows that if she wants to keep the party, the ruling party, Morena, in power after she's gone, she really needs to solve the violence issue in Mexico. And the third thing is the Mexican economy. She also needs to she needs to preserve the economic model that Mexico has been betting on for over 30 years now with the U.S. and Canada. Now this year that, they're renegotiating the USMCA. And that is connected to the World Cup. She needs to present, the image to the world that Mexico is an operating, functional country that can host large events like that one. So it's a lot of things on the table right now.
It's a lot going on. We will continue to watch what's happening. David, good to speak with you. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you, Matt.
David Mora is a senior analyst for Mexico at the International Crisis Group. He was in Guadalajara, Mexico.